Major red flags are surfacing after Trump's White House released at 11 p.m. on Friday night a document that it claimed was the medical report in connection with Donald Trump's physical at Walter Reed from earlier this week. Obviously, red flag number one, releasing a document that you claim is the medical report at 11 p.m. on Friday. But there are so many red flags in this document. I want to go through it with you page by page so you can see that there is a lot of highly suspicious information here. As you go through this document, you see it was prepared by someone named Sean Barbarella, and it was sent in the form of a letter to Donald Trump's chief propagandist, Caroline Leavitt. You'll notice from looking at this, it doesn't contain any of the diagnostic testing. It doesn't contain any of the raw data. It is simply a summary. And when you look at it, it starts to talk about the vital statistics. It says that Donald Trump's weight is 238 pounds. I noted that as something interesting because in the previous physical that Donald Trump took on April 13th, 2025, his weight was 224 pounds. So he gained 14 pounds, and that's not noted in the report right here. When you go to the section that says annual physical examination and diagnostic summary, it says examination was normal except for scarring of the right ear consistent with prior gunshot injury. Hearing is intact. Teeth are in very good condition. I highlighted here consistent with prior gunshot injury, and teeth are in very good condition. If you got shot in the face by an AR-15 or shot in the ear by an AR-15, your ear is blown off. You don't have a little scratch if you get shot in the face by an AR-15 bullet. Can we exercise a modicum of common sense? His ear is not consistent with that of someone shot in the face by an AR-15. Let's just say that as he continues to cover up the medical records and what actually took place in Butler. Then it says his teeth are in very good condition. I'm just going to give you my opinion, but if you look at his teeth, it looks like there's been a lot of work done. It looks like they're veneers, but you can form your own opinions. Then it goes to the next section on page 2, cardiac. Coronary CT angiography demonstrated no arterial obstruction or structural abnormalities of the heart or major vessels. So in other words, they're saying another CT scan was performed of the heart area. Remember the prior annual physical, which turned out was a semi-annual physical back in October of 2025, after the April 2025 physical, where at first Trump's doctor said he got an MRI, then they said it was a CT scan, then they said it was a preventative CT scan of the abdomen, which is not a thing that actually happens. But so he did another coronary CT scan over here. And then it says over here, in addition, AI-enhanced electrocardiogram analysis estimated his cardiac age, an established measure of cardiovascular vitality, to be approximately 14 years younger than his chronological age. So this whole idea of an AI-enhanced electrocardiogram analysis saying that your cardiac age is 14 years younger than his chronological age. Any doctor, any cardiologist, any doctor would never put this in a report right here. That's not a thing. You don't put this in a medical report. That's not a viable exam to say your heart is 14 years younger than your chronological age. So from all the doctors I talked to, that raised a major red flag. Also that he got another CT scan of the heart area and abdomen as well. Then you go to the neurological area. What's notable here, which lots of doctors are telling me, is that there actually is no legitimate, there's no testing here to actually test for dementia or to test for real cognitive decline. They give him the MoCA exam, the Montreal cognitive assessment exam, the MoCA exam. That's the one where he says it's a bird, it's an elephant, it's a cow, and I can tell the difference between a squirrel, a bird, a cow. Those have the same questions over and over again. So if you take the same MoCA 6-7 times, you're taking the same exam over and over and over again. And the testing isn't really a valuable testing for cognitive decline and dementia after you take the same thing 6 or 7 times now, because he says he takes it again right here. Then they claim he got a 30 out of 30 on it. Okay, well then show the underlying data and results versus just saying that. Then it says dermatologic. Examination of the dorsal hands revealed bruising consistent with minor soft tissue irritation relating to frequent handshaking in the setting of aspirin use for cardiovascular prevention. This represents a common and benign effect of aspirin therapy. No suspicious lesions or concerning growths identified. There are lots of concerning marks on the guy's hands, on the guy's neck. And the same way you're trying to gaslight us and say that a scratch on his ear or that the way his ear is consistent with a gunshot to the ear. No, it isn't. What are you talking about? It's the same way over here. You're saying that shaking hands creates a situation where your hands are literally discolored and disfigured the way he is because he shakes a lot of hands. Just stop it. And again, that raises massive red flags right there as well. Then it says current medications. It only lists 3 and it lists aspirin. I think it's lacking a lot of medications that are missing, but that's just my own view right there. Then it goes and says for preventative care, it goes on to say preventative counseling was provided, including guidance on diet, recommendation to take a low dose aspirin, increased physical activity, and continued weight loss. But he has weight gain year over year. And I think we all think he's far heavier, I think we all believe, than 238. So in his April 2025, he was 224. April 2026 now, he's 238. In my opinion, you tell me, you've looked at the guy, I think he's probably 305 to 315, just eyeballing him, maybe more, but I think he's at least 300 pounds. I'm just giving you my evaluation. You could disagree with it, but they act like he's losing weight. He gained weight, and he's probably closer to 300 pounds in my opinion. Then it says summary: Trump remains in excellent health, demonstrating strong cardiac, pulmonary, neurological, and overall physical features. His demanding daily schedule, including multiple high-level meetings, public engagements, and regular physical activity, continues to support his overall well-being. Cognitive and physical performance are excellent. He is fully fit to carry out all duties of the commander-in-chief and the head of state. And again, we see him falling asleep throughout the day. So there is no mention at all here. Let's talk about what's omitted. What's omitted is there's no mention at all that he consistently falls asleep throughout the day. And we all see that. That's not normal. That's not healthy behavior. And that shows that there's a lot of major issues that are taking place. That's not addressed here. And then also, when you look through this report and it talks about how a thorough review of diagnostic studies, 22 specialty providers from multiple academic institutions were involved. Okay, he showed up to Walter Reed based on what he claimed for about 2 hours, 3 hours. So I'm not sure where the 22 specialist providers were, but okay, you're saying there were 22 specialists who were there evaluating him. Well, then let's take a look at their underlying data then. Each one of these things, we could dispel any major issues if you just produce the raw data, the underlying data. If you show what the results of the CT scan are, then we can believe the CT scan. But when you say, his ear is consistent with being your ear blown off, and your hand that's consistent with handshakes, and its grueling schedule shows that he's healthy, and then you omit these glaring things, then you go, his cardiovascular age is AI, his artificial intelligence cardiovascular age is 15 years younger than his chronological age. Okay, he's clearly then writing this himself. Like he's clearly doing this himself. So speaking of which, remember when Donald Trump was running for office in 2015, 2016, he would write the medical reports for his doctor. Remember the Dr. Borstein, the Trump's doctor, who mysteriously died in 2021. And that doctor talked about and told CNN how Donald Trump would write his own medical reports and Trump would force the doctors to write the medical reports. Remember what Dr. Borstein said? This was Trump's doctor. Just want to remind you, during Trump's first term, Trump's doctor then, who mysteriously died in 2021, said the following, to CNN, I believe. Play this clip.
We ran into Dr. Harold Bornstein right here, right outside his office on Park Avenue, and he told us in no uncertain terms, and this is the quote, Aaron, he being Trump, he dictated that whole letter. I didn't write that letter, meaning that Trump dictated what he wanted to go into it, and essentially Bornstein wrote it up. He did say, he compared it to the movie Fargo, and he said it takes the truth and moves it in a different direction. Think about that. Now, Bornstein tells us that he was in a car with his wife when he was on the phone with then candidate Trump in December of 2015. And she was going through with Trump what he could say and what he couldn't say. Trump was dictating what he wanted in that letter. And Bornstein was saying, okay, you can say that, you can't say that. He then came here to the office. He wrote it up. Trump's office later picked it up. He said around 4 p.m. Aaron, we have reached out to the White House, but we have not gotten a response.
And then he said, he also talked about his office then being raided by Donald Trump's thugs, and Donald Trump's goons raided his office. Here, play this clip.
Exactly what they're looking for.
All his medical records, his pictures, anything they could find. We must have been here for 25 or 30 minutes. We created a lot of chaos. I couldn't believe anybody was making a big deal about a drug that's to grow his hair, which seemed to be so important. And it certainly is not a breach of medical trust to tell somebody they take Propecia to grow their hair. What's the matter with that?
And I'll remind you, too, though, on Donald Trump's April 2025 medical report, when it had the summary, the same doctor over here, Dr. Barabella, who prepared the report that I just showed you from May, which was released at 11 p.m. on Friday night, it says, Trump's days include participation in multiple meetings, public appearances, press availability, and frequent victory in golf events. Trump exhibits excellent cognitive and physical health and is fully fit to execute the duties of commander-in-chief and head of state. And so he wrote frequent victories in golf. That was removed from this one because I guess they figured even by all accounts, that one was too much for the prior report. So let me just share with you what Dr. Reiner, world-renowned cardiologist, had to say as well. And I think he has some of the same assessments as me, but he's a doctor. I'm not a doctor. I'm a law professor and a lawyer. I did lots of cases where I would cross-examine doctors when I would do trials, or I would take depositions of doctors in many of my cases. So I probably have done hundreds of examinations of questioning of doctors in high-profile cases. But here's what Dr. Reiner says on Trump's exam. Here, play this clip.
And recommended. What's interesting to me also is that the report mentions that the president underwent a coronary artery CT scan, which is a very useful test, except he had that in the fall. And it's not typically a test that is done every 6 months. It's sometimes done more frequently if someone is having symptoms. We don't know if he's having any symptoms because the exam doesn't list what we call a review of symptoms, where you review of systems, where you go through system by system with the patient and ask them questions like, Are you having headaches? Are you having any shortness of breath? You get chest pain, abdominal pain, et cetera. So there's no real description of a review of systems in this note. But it does mention that, again, they scanned him. So my question is, are they surveilling him for a concern? Are they doing serial CT scans of his heart because they have an ongoing concern? That's not listed in the note.
Then you have Laura Coates and Dr. Reiner talking about the bruising on Trump's hand. Let's play it.
In my hands, you know I was combing over it. I know I wanted to talk to you about this. So Dr. Reiner, much has been made of the president's hand bruising, which is usually covered up by makeup. And I want to just talk about a portion of this medical summary because it states that it is consistent with minor soft tissue irritation related to frequent handshaking. What's your take?
Right. Well, I suppose that can happen, particularly if you're on a higher dose of aspirin than we typically recommend,
which they say,
for a patient for cardiovascular protection. But it doesn't explain why his left hand is also bruising, unless he's doing some left-handed shaking routinely and vigorously. So that's never really rung true. And perhaps it's all just because of this higher dose of aspirin. But my question is, why are you taking a higher dose of aspirin than recommended?
And then they talk about the CT scan. Let's play it.
Are they doing serial CT scans of his heart because they have an ongoing concern? That's not listed in the note. The importance of this memorandum is really summarized in the last line. And this is why it's so important for the public to see this. And when there was some concern that they were just simply not going to release it, what I mentioned earlier today was the last line of all these notes always say the same thing, which is that, upon examination and evaluation of the patient, the president is deemed, fit for service as commander-in-chief and head of state.
Right.
And that's crucial. The public knows that. And this report would speak to that conclusion. There are other things that it misses. There's no discussion of the patient's obvious excess of sleepiness during the day. And that's, I think, an important omission.
And then they talk about the leg swelling. Let's play this clip.
One thing I want to ask you about, and I will note, part of what they say in that last line is that his demanding daily schedule, including multiple high-level meetings, public engagements, and regular physical activity, continues to support his overall well-being, and talks about his cognitive and physical performance. But there were 2 points there, and one is that there was an AI evaluation of the president's cardiac health, and it found he is actually 14 years younger. I want you to elaborate on what that means and how you determine that, but also to your point about monitoring something, there's a section about extremities and musculoskeletal. Slight lower leg swelling was noted with improvement from last year. Does that suggest that there had been a monitoring, and does that give you pause? And tell me about this 14-year younger president.
Well, first of all, if you look at Dr. Barbara Bella's note from April of last year, it notes no swelling in the legs. So if he has swelling in his legs, then that's not an improvement from last year. That's a deterioration from last year. Perhaps it's improved from over the summer when the photos made the press. But last year at this time, they documented that the president had no swelling in his legs.
So how about this AI?
And then how about the AI evaluation? Let's play this clip right here.
But last year at this time, they documented that the president had no swelling in his legs.
So how about this AI date? AI of 14 years younger?
Yeah. So they reported that last year as well. And when I discussed this with some of my colleagues in cardiology, everyone laughed. That's not a clinical use tool. There was one paper on this technology. So, but that's not really a way to gauge cardiac health. Well, that's not a clinically accepted or relevant tool.